So last night I had a really awesome opportunity to go to my jiu-jitsu professor's fourth degree black belt ceremony. So he was advancing to from third degree black belt to fourth degree black belt, which is a really big deal. And it was such a cool thing because it was a really big event. It was way bigger than I thought it was going to be. Everybody from our gym was there. There were people from other gyms. We had some really big time speakers that spoke. So his sensei, so we call ours professors, and he calls his person a sensei. So the person that taught him. Um, so he was there. He spoke, and then there are five or six coral belts in the entire world, like legit coral belts. And a coral belt takes decades. Like you have to be, I don't remember exactly all the numbers, but you have to be like a black belt for like 34 years. You have to be like a red belt for like 7 years or something. Like it's something insane. Like you have to see like these guys that spoke were like in their 70s. Like one was like 78 years old, which is, it's just an amazing achievement to be in a martial art like that for that long. It was really cool to hear them speak. And it was like, there's only two of them. Like it was like two of them out of like five or six in the entire world, which is an incredible thing. But that was like those were like sort of the guys before him. What was also kind of cool is the guys after him spoke to, meaning like parts of his tree. So he had two of his black belts speak, and these are both guys that, so he had sold his first gym to his very first black belt in Brazil, and that guy's name is Professor Joe. He then, and apparently Professor Joe did for a while was like not like getting paid in Brazil because of the guy that was above them, and so my professor, Professor Lima, we call Professor Fabio. So his name's Fabio Lima. He's like, I'm gonna find a way. Told him I'm gonna find a way to repay you someday. And his way of repaying him was he was able to get him to the United States, and he opened a gym underneath my professor in Jefferson City, which is about 30 minutes from Columbia. And then his other black belt, one of his other black belts, opened has taken over that original gym that Professor Fabio had opened. So, and there's all these parts of his tree that have sort of popped up, and have continued in his legacy. And it is, he's got a little son, Teo, who's, like 5 years old, really young. He was there and it was cool. And his wife was there and she spoke. And there were some people from our gym that spoke. It was such a cool thing. And it really got me thinking about like legacy, and legacy for law firm owners. And when it comes to like founders, I don't know if we think about, I think we think about like personal legacy. I think that's something that as law firm owners we think about. What I don't think we think about it is, okay, what parts of our tree are sort of expanding and going out into the legal space, but also like if you compare like the legal space to something like the tech space, like there is someone to take over the company and carry the torch into the future for those companies typically. When it comes to law firms, that's usually not the case. Like I seriously wonder, like, what happens to Morgan and Morgan whenever John Morgan's gone. Now I'm guessing one of his sons takes over, but the way he runs things, I don't know. He runs it very much like a business, and so like wonder how many of you that are listening or watching like how much do you actually think about that, like passing the torch, or is this something that when you retire or you die, God forbid, is the torch extinguished? Like, do you plan on passing the torch? Like, I completely plan on passing the torch. Um, I don't know if it'll be to my kids. I don't. That's not the plan, right? My kids are going to do what they want to do. I am not going to put that on them. I know that. I do know that. If they want to come into the fold and become part of the firm and work their way up and then eventually maybe take it over, I'm okay with that. However, I want them to live their own lives. What I do want to do when it comes to passing torch, I want to build a business that's going to live without me. So when I die, it's going to keep going, and having survival mechanisms built in for if I crash my plane or if I get hit by a bus, I want someone to be able to carry on that torch and continue to operate. And I wonder how many other people are like that. And the reason why this matters is because how you design your firm matters. It really does. If it doesn't matter what happens when you're gone, you are going to design your firm completely different. You just are. You don't need some of those. You don't need some of the things that you need when it comes to a law firm that is going to continue on. Like you don't need the succession planning when it comes to the firm. I mean, you do need some basic succession planning, especially if you're earlier in your career, but you don't need that long-term succession planning where, the firm continues on. Your succession planning is most likely firm closes down. What happens after that? What happens with all the cases? What happens with all the money? But definitely need more intense succession planning when it comes to your firm if you want to continue it on. That's for sure. So, I jotted down some questions. I'm almost like I had for myself, but they're almost for you too. So I want to go through some of these because I think it's kind of a fun thing. Because in martial arts, lineage matters. All right, it does. It's a really really big deal. If you think of if you are into martial arts at all, you know who the Gracies are, the Gracie family, and I would say there probably is a divide when it comes to the lineage, and some people who learn under Professor Carlos have a different feeling when it comes to if they learn under him. It just depends on what part of the family you're from, who you follow. There is in my world, right? Gracie Baja and Gracie Hamida, two different gyms, two different philosophies. I'm Gracie Baja. There's another gym, Gracie Hamida, in Colombia that they seem to kind of go head to head quite a bit. And there's some other gyms too, where especially if you're listening to this, you're probably a part of another gym and you have your own tilt and views on different things. But when it comes to, because in Jiu-Jitsu, people know they know who their instructor, they know who their instructor's instructor was. They know the entire chain of influence. But in law firms, do we even really talk about that? I hear about it some. I know who I learned from that was really, really good. And I know who I learned from that was really, really bad. But I think here's what it is. I don't think we give enough credit to the good ones. I don't think we give enough credit to the lineage and to the good ones. And at least I don't. I'm not going to put that on you. I don't think so I'll mention Steve Meyercord. Very great man. Someone that I learned from that really, really respect. Dorian Graham, another person. Really, really respect. Excellent attorney. So people like that I've learned from that I think are just amazing attorneys. That maybe we should do a little bit better. But it does make me wonder, why as a profession are we not more like jiu-jitsu? Not that we should be. I'm just wondering why we shouldn't. Another thing is what would law firms look like if we treated mentorship the same way martial arts schools do, where it's really kind of cool. And this was talked about last night too, where I will either get freaking almost choked out by someone, or I will, vice versa. I'll almost be choking someone out, and we'll have a really vicious battle. The moment the clock stops and the buzzer goes off, we are hugging it out. I'm talking the moment it ends. even in the tournaments I've been in, someone I don't even know. It's not like we, walk away in our own corners and we are, pouty and we hate each other. We fist bump. Sometimes we hug. Usually it's very common to be hugging. Um, and we don't do that in the legal space anymore. I can tell you, I've seen a massive difference in how people on the litigation side treat each other in the last 16 years. I can just tell you, not gotten better. It is not. It has gotten way more vicious. And I've had this conversation with someone the other day. I think a big part of it has to do. Um, I wouldn't say the majority. I'm not, but I do think a part of it has to do with the plaintiff's bar. When it comes to reptile, I think a lot of people came into the reptile world and they thought that you had to be a jerk when it comes to these things instead of being firm but respectful. And then I think a big part of it comes with just, I think there's a part of the defense side, insurance defense side, that is just inherently just combative. So I think I'm gonna put the majority on that, but I don't think the plaintiff's bars help with that. I think family law is just a messy area. It's one of those things where I think if we were more like jujitsu in that way when it comes to mentorship, I think it would be better. I think the profession would be far better. At least this is my opinion. Um, okay, so this was an interesting question. Okay, I'm really curious. Hopefully we get some comments on this. But what if the true measure of a law firm wasn't revenue or profit or case results? Okay, all of those things matter in some way, some more than others. But what if you were actually measured by how many great lawyers your firm produced? I think about that for a second and think about how much I think better off your firm would be if you instead said, okay, doesn't matter if the attorneys stay or go, how many great lawyers are we producing? And I think if you're producing great lawyers, you're probably going to be producing a lot of people that are going to be willing to stay. They're going to want to stay. At least you're going to be able to attract a lot more talent. That honestly was not a question I had ever asked myself. And it's going to change. I can tell you right now, it's going to change the way we do things. It really is. That question alone. Part of the problem is many law firms are built around one single rainmaker. And I think that's a problem. It really is. If that person retires, if they, leave the profession for whatever reason, I mean, the firm disappears. So if you were more legacy focused, if you're more focused on your tree, the firm is more likely to stick around. It'll survive the founder not being there anymore. It just will be. Because you'll have someone to pass it on to, and people will be able to carry that torch for you. So I am curious about how many people practicing, especially my big concern is the solos that just came out of law school. And I wonder if you've had a mentor, if you have a mentor. I am curious how many lawyers that are founders, people that are listening to this, have had mentors, like true mentors, someone that was invested in you, really, they had a vested interest in you, because I think that matters. And I wonder I would love to see some sort of study about the success of lawyers that have been mentored versus those that haven't. I do think that Maximum Lawyer is a form of mentorship. It's just a different form where, we're there to support. We are there to help you succeed in every way. And so it just comes in a different manner, right? It's just not, one person. It's a sort of a rising tide sort of a approach. But because mentorship, it only matters if the person cares about long-term development. Obviously, we do at Maximum Lawyer, but if you have a one-on-one mentor, they have to truly care about your long-term development. That's why I think sometimes coaching doesn't work. I think sometimes the coaching is about the coach getting paid, right? It's not necessarily about the person's long-term development. I think that's the reality of it sometimes. And so those of you that have had a coach, you've probably experienced that before. But for it to be truly successful, having a coach, having a mentor, they've got to they've got to care about your long term development. Um, this was not on my list, but I do something I thought about a long time ago. So think about if you thought about in like a 30-year mindset versus like a 3-year mindset, but then also what if you thought like a 200-year mindset? I think I've talked about this on the podcast before, but a lot of Japanese companies like Toyota, they think in 200-year horizons. So they design everything so that the company can last 200 years. That is that thinking is so beyond what we are used to. It's not surprising that Toyota has been around for so long. They've been so successful, but they've encountered many hiccups along the way, and they've been able to stand the test of time because of the way they're designed. No, I'm not talking about the cars. I'm talking about the company itself. I think that's kind of cool. Like you think about in 200-year horizons, which I mean, think about what it takes, how deep you really have to think about the development of the company and the development of the leadership and the development of your people. That takes a lot of thought, a lot of forethought. And is it realistic for you to think probably in 200-year horizons? No, that's not the point. The point is the exercise of building a very deep bench, a very deep entrenched culture, all of that. That's what it comes down to. That's what it comes down to. But like kind of think about like the 30-year horizons, 3-year horizons. Like think about what it takes to become a core belt. What I talked about before, right? I mean, you're talking about 4 decades, 5 decades. I mean, that is incredible. Like the system itself, it forces that long term thinking. It's like there's a system built around it. Okay. In contrast, most law firms think in much shorter cycles. They're thinking about the next case, the next phone call. They're thinking about this quarter. They're thinking about next quarter. They're thinking about this year. They're thinking about next year. The idea of a 30-year mindset or a 40-year mindset or a 50-year mindset is not even something that's crossed their mind. So I wonder what changes. So if you've never thought of that, like what changes when you start to think in a 30-year timeline? I mean, a lot changes, right? You're designing things so much differently. You're probably taking a step back. You're pausing, thinking, okay, does this case really matter? This case that it's okay, there's some good money here, but do I really need this case? Right? It changes the way you think about hiring employees. It changes the way you think about firing employees. It changes a lot of things. I think in a very good way, it slows things down, right? You stop to think, okay, how much does this really matter? How much is this going to matter in 30 years? I'm not going to remember this moment at all, right? That's pretty cool when you start to think about like that. To me, it relieves a lot of my stress. It really does. Like so, just have fun with me for a second. Like imagine designing your firm the way a martial arts school designs, like belt progression. Okay, so you have these very clear development stages. You've got built-in mentorship. You've got built-in mastery, where that's part of the advancement. Um, I, I mean, think about if you could design your firm with advancing your employees that same way. It's definitely doable. It is 100% doable, and you just have to take the time to design it. Have we designed it to that point? No, 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 no. Not to that level. I wish I could say that we have, but we have not. That is a different set of thinking. We have scorecards and all that, and we have done our best to design goalposts for our people to know how to get to advancement. But when it comes to the advancement like jujitsu, we have not thought about it to that level. But it's one of those things that I'm also going to start. We're going to start thinking about it now. People aren't going to be earning belts and all that, but there's certainly a way we can design the progression. I think that that's a pretty cool thing to think about. And I think we'll be able to do that. It's just a matter that it's going to take some time. It's just going to take some time. Because think about like today, like think about this question. Here's a really good question for you. Okay. So if a lawyer started at your firm today, or employee, whatever it is, okay, it could be a receptionist, but every position, what would their black belt track look like? What would it look like? If they start at your firm today, and let's focus on attorneys for a second. So if a lawyer started at your firm today, what would their black belt path look like? How do they earn their blue belt? So they start as a white belt. How do they get their blue belt? Okay. The way it sort of works in jiu-jitsu, and it's different in every gym, but I'm going to give you a somewhat of a framework. So you've got, and this is for adults, kids are a little bit different. So you're at white belt for about a year and a half. And these are not based on time. I'm just giving you, they're based on skill, but this is roughly how long it takes for you to develop these skills. Year and a half, get your blue belt. And then you're a blue belt for a couple of years. Okay. Let's say 2 to 3 years. And then you're a purple belt for 2 to 3, 4 years. Okay. And then you're a brown belt for 2 to 3, 4 years, something like that. So it takes at a minimum to get a black belt 10 years. So you're not getting a black belt in 10 years. Right. So now if you kind of break that down for attorneys, because there's definitely black belt attorneys and there's definitely blue belt attorneys, there's definitely white belt attorneys, there's different varying qualities of attorneys. So what does that path look like for your attorney? Right. I think designing that would be very, very helpful for you. It would also be very, very helpful for them. More so probably for them, but for the longevity of the firm, extremely helpful. Because are we building careers inside our firms, or are we just building jobs? If we're just building jobs, then this is not a long-term thing for them. They want to have careers. They don't want to have a job. And many of us think about that incorrectly. That is a massive distinction. Run that idea by them today. I guarantee you that they're going to agree with me. Guarantee it. If you disagree with me, I would love to hear from you. I would absolutely love to hear anyone that would disagree with that comment. Because like no great thing is created suddenly. It's just not. Great things take time. And a career is a great thing. A job is usually not. Right? All right. So here's another kind of question. Like, what would change your firm if you designed it to last 100 years? Okay. So let's take it not 200, not 100. So just, it's kind of like on your own, kind of a prompt just to sort of get your mind thinking. Like, how would you change things from where it is right now? So I'd love to hear from you on that. Leave us a comment. I would always like to get comments, and I will definitely respond to them. All right. I'm kind of running out of time, so I'll make sure I get to some of these other questions. All right. When it comes to training, I think what's really kind of cool is in jiu-jitsu, because I want to keep this kind of jiu-jitsu theme throughout this entire episode. What's really neat is, at least at our gym, every gym is going to be a little bit different, but at least at our gym, like, I remember there were people that were way better than me, and they wouldn't just submit me. Like, what they would say is, I remember this guy, Shane. He was awesome. He would say, like, the guy is like, got like 200 pounds on me, gigantic guy, full of muscle. And he could tap me in probably 30 seconds. But he would say, instead of just, tapping me, he would say, okay, try this, move your hand here, move your arm there, put your leg here, and to help improve me. Right. And so that kind of gets passed on, where like I do the same thing now with people that I'm better than. And I'd say, oh, you know what? You would have had me here if you would have put your arm there, or if you would have held this position here, you just got to turn your hand the right way. And so I think one of the cool things that that we do in jiu-jitsu that could definitely be applied in the legal space is that if you train one lawyer, you got to train them well, and you got to teach them sort of the way in jiu-jitsu where, many times leaders are, they point out the negatives. And instead of defeating them, right, how about we help them win by telling them how to do the things the right way, complimenting them on the good things that they're doing, and be a little bit, give a little more grace when it comes to the things that they do poorly. And what they're going to do is they're going to do the same thing to the next people down the road. So passing that influence from you to them, to the next person, to the next person, it's really going to spread. I think that part's really, really important. Okay. Another thing we could probably do, and as part of this, is this when it comes to that mentorship, try to find a way to treat it as a core business metric if you can. And an easy way of doing that maybe is when it comes to, how many hours a quarter did we mentor younger lawyers? Okay. So just something to think about. Because how many lawyers practicing today are practicing the way they do because of something that you taught them or another attorney taught them? Pretty much all of them are. Like, unless you start as a true solo, even the true solos, they had to learn from somewhere. They learned from someone. Some of them may have read it in a book, but ultimately that came from someone, right? So, think about that impact. That's a really big impact. Okay. So if I were you, I would start kind of thinking about who's one lawyer in your firm you could start intentionally mentoring this year, and really kind of think it through, think about who that might be. I think it's a really good way of starting. Because, are we building law firms that revolve around us, or are we building firms that can exist without us? And it kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier. Most of us are creating firms that are revolving around us, and we've got to get away from that if we want to kind of get all that pressure off of us. But it also, that's part of it, is getting that pressure off of us. But if we want long-term firms that can outlast us, we've got to make it where it doesn't revolve around us. So I am going to wrap it there. I've got a lot, as usual. I've got a lot more that I had to cover, but I think I've got everything that I want to. Because what I really want is I want you to be proud of your firm, and I want you to create the firm that you want. I want you to create the firm, even if it does revolve around you. That is completely fine. That being said, there's many lessons that we can learn from jiu-jitsu about passing on a legacy. So even if the firm does revolve around you, I'm sure you want to pass on some sort of legacy. I'm sure that it would be very nice for, in your profession, people respected you. People, they said, you know what, Tyson, man, the footprint he left on this earth is powerful, right? That's something I would want. Right? You don't want the opposite. You definitely don't. So I think it's something that something worth thinking about. I would love to hear your thoughts about it. Leave me a comment. It'd be great. Also, check out Becca's List. Becca's List is there for you. It's free. And it's free to use. And so go there, leave a review, check out other vendors, find out who you like, who you don't like, who to avoid, and who is great. And give money to the ones that are great. That's all I would say. I'm not incentivized to tell you that. I'm just telling you, give money to the good ones, don't give money to the bad ones. That's just a basic principle that I live by. So. And then also, if you're interested in the association, check us out. Go to MaximumLawyer.com. We would love to have you. But thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. See ya.